Welcome to the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast, the untold stories of the 3HO Kundalini Yoga community. I'm your host, Guru Nishan. And as always, I like to start our podcast with the intentions for why we started this podcast. Number one, to break the veil of silence that has long permeated and continues to strangle the 3HO Kundalini Yoga community in the name of neutrality. Number two, to validate and help clarify the complex feelings of those who have joined this lifestyle, were born and raised into it, and or who have practiced or taught Kundalini Yoga. Number three, to encourage active listening to uncomfortable conversations from this community as a revolutionary act of self and collective healing. Number four, to let survivors know that we see them, we believe them, we love them, and we will fight for their truth to be addressed. Number five, to let teachers who are denying, gaslighting, or spiritually bypassing know that what they are doing is willfully ignorant and re-traumatizing victims. Number six, to illuminate the inherent racism, homophobia, cultural appropriation, and exploitation that perpetuates the teachings, 3HO lifestyle, and overall community ethos. Number seven, to stop the perpetuation of gaslighting and victim shaming by naming it for what it is. Number eight, to dismantle internalized shame, guilt, toxic positivity, and lightwashing mentality. Number nine, to honor all of the parts of ourselves that have been forgotten or silenced. Number 10, to honor each and every body that has come through this community, both named and unnamed. And number 11, to encourage people to do their own research, to process their own emotions, to get somatic therapy, cult-specific therapy, and other support as needed, to draw your own conclusions, and to be critical thinkers rather than to just blindly follow anyone. Please remember that your story matters. Please share it when you're ready. We're here to listen and to support you. If you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, please email me at gn@gurunishan.com or check the show notes for details. I'm pretty excited about our guest today, folks. Today, we are speaking with Els Coenen, formerly Ravinder Kaur. She lives in Belgium. She was 49 years old when she took her first Kundalini Yoga class and immediately fell in love with it and became a teacher in 2008. She taught Kundalini Yoga for 10 years. Gave multiple classes a week, organized workshops and teacher training programs in Belgium and East Africa, and assisted in them. Every year she went to the European Yoga Festival, had a booth at the bazar to collect funds for the seva-based teacher training programs in East Africa, combining this work with a job in the Telecom sector. She organized a Sat Nam Rasayan training in Belgium. In 2013, 2 women were sexually abused by a Sat Nam Rasayan instructor. Because Els insisted that the harm would be recognized and action would be taken to prevent future abuse, she was excommunicated by Guru Dev Singh, master of this healing technique and student of Yogi Bhajan and Belgium. And Belgium was declared a no-go zone for Sat Nam Rasayan for 2 years thereafter. From 2010 till 2018, Els presided over the Belgian Federation of Kundalini Yoga and represented her country at the international level. Disillusioned by many things, she stopped all Kundalini Yoga related activities in 2018. When in 2020, the book Premka, White Bird in a Golden Cage, triggered many survivors to tell their stories, Els stepped in again, hoping that the time for transparency and clarity had finally come. She was part of an advisory team of the Compassionate Reconciliation Program, but stepped out at the end of 2022 as she experienced it as a window dressing. In April 2021, after she read and or listened to survivor stories on many different platforms and had watched hours and hours of the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast, she contacted me, Guru Nishan, and with the approval of the survivors involved, she made extracts of the interviews and put them together on a website, abuseinkundaliniyoga.com. Again, that's abuse-in-kundalini-yoga.com. Check the show notes. To allow people with less free time than listening to hours and hours and hours of my podcast to be informed on what's actually happening. Now, Els has written a book in partnership with me, extracting the voices of survivor stories, and has written a book called Under the Yoga Mat, The Dark History of Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini Yoga. I'm oozing with excitement, Els. Thank you for being here. And
thank you.
I'm overwhelmed by your Kundalini Yoga story and reminded why I'm so excited to have partnered with you in this project and to have you on the podcast today. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, and thank you for having me, and thank you for wanting to partner with me. And well, I always find it a bit strange to be excited. I'm also excited about the book coming out, but we should not have had to write it, right? It should not have been our job to write it. We only do it, and you continue to do what you do, and I continue to do what I do, because it's not done elsewhere. Well, it is. Many people are doing many things, but I mean, it would have been better if this would have been done from inside, but it is not. So
Yeah,
here we are.
I understand the conundrum of saying I'm excited about a book on survivor stories, because it's not really excitement as much as it is the joy of illuminating of the disinfectant of sunshine.
Yeah.
And to shine the light on the darkest places, and listening to your bio and how early sexual abuse had happened within the Sat Nam Rasayan community, and how you had spoken up, and how there had been nothing done, and how you just kind of got ignored, and what that really illuminates. And that's why I'm excited for listeners to hear your backstory, because hearing that and hearing a part of your individual process, it's so important, because it's happened to far more people in this community over many, many decades. And that's what this work really does, is it collates all of this content where people don't even know where to begin to research and look at it. And you put it all under one roof, because your story started earlier. You witnessed this firsthand and got shunned.
Yeah, indeed. And the fact that I think I could do what I'm doing that now, because I stopped in 2018. So I also stopped before everything came out. So I already had 2 years of realizing how it was to be out of the community for 2 years, and seeing it from the outside, which is completely different than when you are in it. And it takes a lot of time, because even in 2020, I think I would still have felt very difficult to call it a cult. While now, when I have studied other cults and read a lot about it, and talked with cult experts, I realized, yeah, it was a cult. And also here in Europe, also for people like me, who started years after Yogi Bhajan died. It's different, but still there are cult aspects in there. And I've felt, and that is something I feel like you can only realize when you're outside, how it was to be inside and what I missed. So I was in there for 10 years. And of course, there were beautiful things. And I loved the yoga. And I loved, this is why I went to do Sat Nam Rasayan. So the healing technique of that is linked to Kundalini Yoga. and that is based on a lot of meditation, and meditating together in groups for hours and hours and hours, so you get high, and I love that.
You had some space out,
Mhm.
you know, because you had these early incidences, and you got to quote be in leadership and experience what abusive leadership is like, and then still remain in the community, then remove yourself. And then when all the stuff broke open in 2020, you had a little bit more language to kind of like jump in and be like, oh, finally there's place for transparency. And so I really like this part of your story, especially because, as you said, you came in well after Yogi Bhajan had passed. And this is a lot of the kind of the platitude language that I'm hearing among people within 3HO and Sikh Dharma still around, oh, you know, I came in long after YB's done. I don't know anything about those things. It's like an easy way to kind of brush off the issue. And there are lots of people like you. You bring up Sat Nam Rasayan because that's the community you gravitated to. That's like the Reiki of Kundalini Yoga. So it's like the energy system of Kundalini. And here it was like a predatory baton got passed. And everybody that was a part of 3HO around that time witnessed this, of when Yogi Bhajan was amping up Guru Dev Singh, and how over the years he got groomed to kind of be this next takeover. And your story kind of will illuminate some of this stuff right from the inside of it in Europe.
Yeah. So where do you want me to start?
That's a good question. Where do you want to start? What I guess what I want to say is this, listeners, I want you to hear that we're very excited to share the Under the Yoga Mat, the material that Els has spent the last number of years really collating and putting together, using this podcast platform, Survivor Stories, but also many, many other sources, academic, written, other audio and podcasts, as well as print, as well as academic, as well, all these different sources that we've may or may not seen, because you may or may not be on Facebook. You know, you may or may not have been in that particular Zoom call when these particular stories got shared. And so a part of what we're really excited to highlight today is the launching of this material. And so that's where we want to get to. But we also want to give a little bit of background, so you get to really feel Els in her own 3HO story, because she's not coming in as an outsider telling a story as an academic who read stuff. She's had her own experience, and had her own experience of exiting the community prior to all this coming out. And then as all this came out, she reinserted herself back into the conversation. The reason you and I have connected is because in the midst of me creating a platform of truth telling, you wanted snippets to put up there. And I'm all for taking a 3-hour podcast and taking a 4-minute or a 15-minute version of that and slapping it up on a website, as Els did, you know, in the heart of 2020, or maybe it was 2021, because the podcast started at the end of 2020. And what I felt like it was serving was the mission that I felt Els has always been on, which is just exposing the truth. Whoever is sourcing the file, we're sourcing it. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So maybe one thing I want to say is that all the if we tell survivor stories in the book, it's the people whose stories are told gave us their approval. So there's nothing that we brought that is not approved by the people who tell stories.
And it's a part of why I decided to collaborate with you, because when having clips on your website was one thing, but to have your words put on paper is a different experience. And as a child of this community, we're very sensitive to other people coming in and telling stories, even if it's our quotes, because we've had that happen. And so I really wanted to be a part of what I felt you to be on a bigger mission. I felt like, I lived in East Africa, and I was married to an East African man for many years, and I was connected to South Africa and Pritam. I was also connected to Krishna Kaur. So we had this kind of synergy, Els and I. So when she did move from having clips of my podcast on her site to wanting to move into the print version, I felt like in order for this to be done well and for your work to be received properly, as a child of the community, I wanted to add my voice and credibility and connection to make sure that it was a safe zone and that people really knew that you meant well. This isn't you trying to line your pockets and make money. This is a nonprofit endeavor.
Another,
and all this is donated, all the profits, are going to be donated to the work, to cult survivors and children that are abused. And so you can speak to that as well. But again, it's why I wanted to collaborate with you, is because our stories kind of overlapped in interesting ways. But mostly I want listeners to really hear that you have a personal story here. And while we're going to get to the book and the purpose for all of it, we want to rewind and let you hear Elsa's the Kundalini yogi at 49 that, had her lights turned on from the inside out.
Yeah, and first have the lights turned off because in 2007, I had a stroke. I don't know if I ever told you, but yeah, I had a stroke in 2007, which meant that because I was kind of a workaholic, I was working seven days a week and many hours. And so I got this stroke, and it took me 9 months to recover. And I went back to the fitness studio where I used to work out, but I felt like my body needed a slow startup. And I said, what do you have other than working out? And they said, well, there is this yoga class. And I went into this Kundalini Yoga class. I didn't know what Kundalini Yoga was. I had heard about Kundalini because I had been studying during my recovery. I had taken up a very old passion of mine that was to look at the Vedas. I was always fascinated by the Vedas, these old scriptures. So I thought, oh yeah, Kundalini Yoga, why not? And this first class, it was like you see many and you hear many people say the same thing. It's like, puff, it was spot on. I knew this is what I need to do. I loved it. And I really felt like my body this was really what was going to help me. And so I was immediately taken away by it. So that was that was October 2007. Yeah. And then in 2008, immediately I took a teacher training, and I did level 1, level 2, I did it all. And I took it in Holland, in the Netherlands. And my teacher was Guru Marka, who lived in Germany, and he died last year. So I was my teacher training and all the experiences I had was mostly in the Netherlands and in Germany, because Belgium, I think in those days in Belgium, there were about 8 teachers, something like that. So we were really very few. And if you see them now, there are hundreds, and there are a few hundred teachers by now. But we did not have a teacher training program in the Dutch part of the country, because Belgium is very small between the Netherlands and France and Germany, but we speak 3 languages. So we have Dutch-speaking part, a French-speaking part, and a German-speaking part. And so in the Dutch-speaking part, there was no training in those days. So the first one who came to give a training there was Gurmukh. Gurmukh from, what is
Golden
it?
Bridge.
Golden Bridge.
Yep.
And so I, in fact, was the idea was that I would assist her, and she was my mentor for a very short time, because only 1 week, 1 session, and I felt like, no, this is so different from what I thought Kundalini Yoga was with Guru Marka. So already, you see, I think my teacher, Guru Marka, was seen a little bit in the organization, and I say this with a lot of respect, but he was seen like kind of a rebel, which I think maybe I'm also always seen as kind of a rebel. So anyway, with Gurmukh, she asked me, because many of the students in the level 1 in Belgium, in her training, were students that came to my yoga classes, because it was in Antwerp, and so I was giving classes there. So that was, and she was also involved with Sat Nam Rasayan, or she still is, I don't know. And she appreciated that I was doing both Kundalini Yoga and Sat Nam Rasayan. So I had that first experience with Gurmukh where I already thought, whoa, this Kundalini Yoga is not just one thing. It depends very much on who is teaching and what energy is there in the space and the intention of the teacher. So, and I also felt that my system was resonating with certain teachers and not with other teachers. So even if officially you cannot change mentorship, you have to stay with the same mentor. They allowed me to go back to Guru Marka.
Can I ask a question? Do you mean in the Aquarian Academy? You're saying
Yeah, I was in the Aquarian. Yeah.
So in the Aquarian Academy, you have to have a mentor, and you're not allowed to change it if you don't like your relationship.
Well, anyway, that was a recommendation to stay with the same mentor, because if you would always change mentorship, that would mean that you're not. Your obedience is not as it should be, or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's like setting up that whole idea of like choosing the teacher, and you have a teacher in life, and all the ways that they promote that stuff, right?
Yeah, but then I had this experience that okay, Gurmukh, she said, yeah, you can come and assist in my training, but only if I can come become your mentor. And I had to say, yeah. So because I did not want to change mentorship, I was very happy with Guru Marka because I was also assisting in his trainings in Holland and in Germany. But then Gurmukh, she said, and I thought, well, and I looked at, okay, the students that I know who want to do this level 1, they are in the training with Gurmukh. So maybe I should say yes, and it's not such a big thing. And she comes from the US, and I will learn things. So I said yes, but then after the first week, I thought, no, for me, this is not a yoga. There is no relaxation. It's only adrenaline and getting high. So
wow.
But just before, because it's really interesting, this thing about the lead trainers and the mentors. Just before Gurmukh came to Antwerp, Shiv Sharan Singh, who is now still very active, I think he's the most popular teacher in Europe, he was also looking to have the training started in Belgium, in Antwerp, in the same yoga studio. And so they contacted me, so it was a Dutch teacher who is working for Shiv Sharan. And we had a weekend or 3 days, a workshop with Shiv Sharan to see because they also wanted me to be an assistant in their training. And so we had this meeting with Shiv Sharan, and he said exactly the same. You can only be an assistant in my teacher training if I am your mentor. So you have to change mentorship. And I said, well, I do not intend, because I was with Guru Marka, and I said, I don't know why I should, because they were asking me to change mentorship. I said, I don't see why. And I think it's a richness to have people from different teachers in the same training, and to have these different energies and these different approaches, and have assistants from different schools. It's rich, it's diversity. But he said, no, then if you do not want to change and become my student, then I ask you to leave the room. And I said, I'm very happy to leave the room.
Wow.
So, because with him,
proprietary knowledge, unless you're my disciple. And look how that's built into the training system that actually creates like a fandom or a stardom, which is interesting.
Yeah, and so it was
like buying loyalty almost.
Yeah, and it's like, it's I don't know how you call it in English, but it's like every teacher, big teacher, and this is what I appreciated in Guru Marka, he didn't play this game, but in Europe in those days, there was still Karta Singh, and there was Shiv Sharan, and there were others. And so everybody, and in Germany, you had other teachers, everybody was trying to get his territory. And so, and I really didn't want, and I thought it's so, no. So, so I was in all these teacher trainings, and then I started also in Sat Nam Rasayan. So you see, I'm full-time working. I'm doing all this. I'm starting as a president of the Belgian Federation. So I'm fully into, without realizing, only seeing it right now. I take my cold showers in the morning. I do my sadhanas. I recite Japji every morning. I do all the things. Sleep deprivation, yeah? Sleep deprivation.
You're also hosting and organizing trainings, right? Multiple different
Yeah,
trainings,
yeah,
doing classes. And so the amount of commitment, then there's the seva, and then there's your own practice, and just
yeah,
how quickly you've committed your
yeah,
whole
committed.
dedication to it.
Yes, yes. And then starting, because I loved also so there was a friend of mine who was a Kundalini yoga teacher who lived in Burundi, and they were going to leave the country. And he had his yoga students, and he said it would be such a, yeah, it would be so bad to just leave and have nothing. So, and he was still there for 1 or 2 years. So we at the yoga festival in Europe, we talked to Krishna Kaur about setting up seva-based training in Burundi, and she agreed. She was the first lead trainer for the training in Burundi. So, and I participated as an assistant. And then we did another one, and the year
What year was
afterwards.
that? What year was that?
I think it was 2010, 2011. I somewhere I have them.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and then, so this seva-based trainings, in fact, it went wonderful because we did 2 in Burundi and 2 or 3 in Kenya, because we did it in Burundi. Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to ask who some of the lead people were there, because I remember meeting 2 African fellows. I want to say they were from Burundi, because I was in LA with Krishna Kaur at that time when she was doing that particular training, because she wanted me to come along because I had lived.
Oh, really? We could have met at that moment.
And I was doing teacher training with her in 2009-10. That's my point.
Oh, yeah, that was in the same period.
And so these gentlemen came. If you said their names, I would remember. But anyway, this is the synchronicity. So
yeah, but I think these are people from Togo or Ghana.
Yeah, you're right. They were from Togo. That's exactly right. They were from Togo.
Because they were, there was a training before that in Togo and Ghana, but we were not involved. But Krishna was involved. Because in fact, the level ones, when they did their exams, Burundi is French speaking. So for Krishna, there was always translating and translations. So, and the people from Ghana or Togo, I don't remember, they were correcting they had to correct the exams of the students.
Right.
For level 1.
Okay. Well, interesting. So you're doing seva-based, you're raising money at the European Yoga Festival.
Yeah.
And see, to basically get these Kundalini yoga teacher trainings happening and available to East Africans, West Africans, these types of trainings.
And we always had a very nice mixture of about 2/3 of the people who were locals, and then 1/3 who were expats who would pay the normal amount for the teacher training program, what they would pay in Europe. And then everything from my yoga classes, from the workshops, income from the Sat Nam Rasayan trainings, for the organizer, that was me. So, and it covered the costs, and the cost, what was that? That was the cost of the food during the training, the location, and then the air tickets for the teachers. And so we had Krishna involved there in Burundi. It was beautiful to do that together with her. And the next year and then we had other teachers coming over. So there was another training in Burundi done by the teacher from South Africa, Pritam
Hari,
Pritam Hari, she did one.
Got it.
And then Guru Marka, he did one. And then people from Kenya contacted me to say, hey, you are in Burundi, why don't you come to Kenya? So I went to Kenya. And then from Kenya, there were people from Ethiopia who were in. So it was like, so we did that for a number of years, and it flowed. It was like, it was easy. But then again, when I look at it now, I say it flowed, but there were so many things happening that I say, what were we doing? Like we were tying turbans on the heads of these Africans. When I look at the pictures now, I say, what were we doing? Because this is one thing that I also realize is the link between Sikhism and Kundalini Yoga. So when I listened, I was participating in the town hall meetings for the election of the leadership, the board of directors for the leadership group, the Siri Singh Side Corporation. And for all these people, is like Kundalini Yoga and Sikh Dharma is one. It's connected. You cannot separate it. Certainly for the pro-Bhajanists, you cannot separate it. The CEO of KRI, Amrit Singh, he says, from the Kundalini Research Institute, he says, no, we are not religious. But the SSSC is religious. The overall organization is religious. Sikh Dharma is a religious company. But I remember in our level 1, when we had big discussions with Guru Marka, and we said, are we part of a religion? He said, no. This Kundalini Yoga is not a religion. And so also when I was teaching, no, this has nothing to do with a religion. I didn't know, I never heard the word Sikh Dharma. And I think that's such a big difference. I think people do not realize in the States, or people from leadership do not realize how few people, only people who are related to ashrams in Europe, and people who are lead trainers or very closely related to the organizations know about this Sikh Dharma. My yoga students in those days, I think we should not say my students.
They might not know about Sikh Dharma, but they're learning how to get a turban tied on their head pretty fast.
In the level 1, yes.
That's my point. So they might not know it's called Sikh Dharma, but they're learning that the highest path they can take is to be a vegetarian, not cut their hair, become celibate, and cover their hair.
So they say it is not religious, but you put on a turban and you recite Japji every morning. And there are all these things, but then again, so you do it, it's included, and we were even teaching it. So in Burundi we were putting turbans, and so these, and we were doing which kriya is it, Sat Kriya with Sat Nam, and they had it as a homework, and there was a guy who had to go out and do it in the jungle because his friends and family, his neighborhood, they thought he was chanting Satan. He was excommunicated from his church. He wanted to marry in his church, and they didn't want to marry him because he had a turban on his head. So we were creating all these needless complexity and confusion, and now that this is one of the things I struggle with, is how did I not see that? I was also wearing this turban. And I remember one day my brother came in. I was visiting my mother, and my brother came in and he said, "You have an injury on your head?" So they were laughing with it, but I was like, no, I have this turban, and I felt good with it. Yeah, it was an experience in those days. But
and it's so common. Like, I just want to really just pause on that to just say, like, in the short years I taught, I would watch that. I would watch a student that like really had a profound love for the practice because it made them feel good inside, stay going to classes, and then decide to go to Solstice, and then from there take a teacher training, change their name, wear a turban. It was so fast. I was like, whoa, what just happened? Like, it was like a blink. And then before you knew it, they were on what I now call the marketing funnel train into a world. And you're so right. I want to rewind a little bit further. The language that says, depending on the teacher you get a very different experience of Kundalini Yoga.
Yeah. And then what we know now, we also know that even the good teachers, they use a technology that was used to bring people into states that they would not see what was happening in front of their eyes. And they were teaching a technology and a lifestyle that was creating a situation in which children who were hurt found nobody they could talk to, because they could only be positive. They should not have any negativity. So emotions, they had to, this is the abuse, this is the emotional abuse that was happening. And that is that comes from the lifestyle and from the yoga, just
right.
to bring everybody into this state of numbness. And this is what, then there we come to the cult identity. So if you read about cults, so these techniques to indoctrinate and to brainwash and to bring people into these states where they are isolated from everybody. They are in a community and they say, oh, we love our community, but they are lonely. There is isolation.
So bringing it back to you, you're lonely in the sense that you're organizing all these things. You're busy doing all these things. The practice is helping you. You're committed to the practices. You're obviously doing seva-based work by
was not
spreading the
lonely.
teachings into Burundi and East Africa.
I was very busy. And I also want to say, so we will later on, when we look at the slides that we prepared from a cult structure, is that from those who are far away from the kernel, from the US and the inner circles and the top organizations, in the community of the Kundalini Yoga teachers in Belgium, I think I was the fanatic, yeah. So very few other teachers. I only know, there might be others, but I only know one who really became a Sikh, and she lives in UK now, and she's with the Punjabi Sikhs, and she's very happy as a Sikh. She's a really devoted Sikh. But I know only one. And then I was like fully involved doing all the things. But many of my friend teachers, they were much cooler about everything. And they always said, you are so, because why me? Okay, maybe because I had to be in, because I had to be able to write this book. I don't know. So, but it's very complex. It depends on where you come from. And maybe it has to do with the stroke that I was still in recovery, whatever. And I loved
also
Africa.
What teachers you get. What
teachers,
you get. Your initial entry, right? And how you get nurtured into a system is kind of how you are taught to see in that system. And so the fact that you're talking about an early relationship with Guru Marka, who had his own rebel spirit of the way he was doing things.
So, but I loved everything I was doing, like in Africa. So I went 4 times a year. I went there to do the trainings, etc. So it lasted for a number of years. And in parallel, I was doing this Sat Nam Rasayan thing. And maybe, so I can close the chapter of Africa.
Yeah, I want to pause on that and just say, from the seva level, here you are, a European woman, right? You have a practice that helps you at a particular stage in your life. You're a committed, dedicated worker in your field, and you find a practice that changes your own life and is a part of being able to kind of give back to people that also need this technology in less fortunate places. And the irony, right? The irony of what you're saying around, like, here we are putting turbans on African people, like the colonial constructs that are on repeat. And we're just pinning that. There's no solution here. We're just pausing to say, from this big, beautiful heart of yours, doing really good and meaningful service in a way that I know really did impact a lot of people, in the structure of like, that colonial screech that lives in there.
Yeah, because with this book that is out now, I asked 2 Kundalini Yoga teachers and to read it before it came out. And one of them is a Kenyan lady, Lydia, and she put a review on the website. So we will put a link of the website in your notes. And so they did. I asked them before they read the book, of course, what do you know about the abuse? And they all knew. They knew there is a book called Premka, and they knew it's about abuse, but they don't know much more than that. And so they were willing to read it. So I did not force them to read it. I told them, well, this can be disturbing, and I know that once you know, you cannot unknow. So I ask a lot of you, but only do it when it feels right. And so both of those teachers, they said, no, it feels right. And so this woman from Kenya, she confirms in her review, she says, this yoga brought me so much and still does. And voila, so it's very complex. It's very complex. But okay, let me continue.
It is very complex. I just wanted to just put the pause in that it's this is what makes this stuff so complex, people. Like, it's not so easy to just be like, this is horrible. And how could I have done that? It's pulling parts of ourselves apart to be like, a part of me loved this. And this was also happening simultaneously. And our willingness to sit in that.
And I was serving the purpose. I was serving the purpose. I was spreading the teachings. I even at a certain moment, I won a prize. I don't remember what the name was from 3HO. It was a money prize, so we were happy with it. So you are, I was really into the whole, but I also want to say that I'm at least in Belgium, and I think in most countries, the people who are engaging themselves this way, I did, there are not so many. So there are many people, teachers who are just teaching their weekly classes, and that's it.
And I also think that that's a part of what makes this such an interesting community in general, is the ranges of the spectrums. Like, it almost occurred to me when you were sharing a little bit in this past share of your story, that it almost feels like it's a numbers game. Like, if you think about it from like the Kundalini Yoga teacher's perspective, like the legacy teacher story, as you brought up, is here this head honcho teacher is saying, hey, I want you to do this for me, but in order for you to do this, to help with our teacher training, you have to become one of my disciples. And they're like, no, I'm not willing to do that. Oh, okay. So it's kind of like playing cards, and it's like a seeds. And if you put out X amount of seeds in sales, you always know it's a numbers game. So if you need to end up with this many people in your teacher training, you got to talk to this many people. And it's this, and not everybody is going to commit the way Els committed. Some people are just going to be the outliers of the Kundalini Yoga kind of they might even get a spiritual name, but never use it. They might wear a head covering only when they go to tantric yoga, but they would never wear a head covering just at a yoga class if they didn't have to. So there's all the range. But it doesn't make the indoctrination quote less, because it's still kind of like that seed planting that the most pure, the most committed, the most dedicated, the most enlightened are the ones that have gone the full on path.
Yeah, and the isolation that you create for it, the isolation, and I don't mean that I was lonely or whatever, because there was always a lot of work to do and there were many people around, but it ends up being the only thing you do.
All your friends end up being right within
your social life. I remember after the level 1, I went to a barbecue, and there were my old friends, and I couldn't talk to them anymore. I didn't know what they were talking about, and I felt like disconnect. And so you are really,
well, you've changed your diet and you no longer drink, and there's just all these
you're not
lifestyle
drinking.
changes, no alcohol, and then you're waking up at 3 a.m., which automatically limits things, and this whole lifestyle, and you actually feel like you're more elevated and that you're actually like superior in some way than these other people that have yet to awaken their consciousness.
These superiorities, this thing, this is the best yoga. Why, for God's sake, on what basis was I saying to the people, to the people who came to my yoga class, this is the best yoga? Because it has everything in it. And I had all the arguments from the level 1 teacher training, but I was like a parrot, I was repeating. But I have no experience in other yogas. And I'm a scientist. And I was telling them this, and I was convinced. I was not. There were so many things. This is an ancient technology. Me, the lover of the Vedas.
I think we were just at this. You were transitioning from East Africa, but you really wanted to highlight the Sat Nam Rasayan
yes
focus, because you were hosting that and doing quite a lot for that community. Give us that, because
so I had
really
been
came to a head
in 2011. I think I had followed myself Sat Nam Rasayan training level 1 in Germany, because we didn't have it in Belgium at that time. And so I loved it. I loved Sat Nam Rasayan. Why? Again, because you get high. I love getting high. And this peace and this calm, and I loved Sat Nam Rasayan. I never had a connection, and we had a very good teacher in Germany, a normal guy, not a very sick type of guy, a very normal guy. And I went to all the workshops with Guru Dev, but I saw the devotion of other people towards Guru Dev, and I never got it, because I never felt a connection whatsoever with Guru Dev. Never, ever, ever. I loved the space, but I never had this connection. And if I spoke, so I had this experience with the lead trainers in the training that were saying, you have to be mine, you have to be mine, no, you're not. So this hierarchical and these power games, I really, this is something that I cannot stand it. And I felt like in Sat Nam Rasayan it was worse, because I then said, I want to organize a training, and they said, yeah, you can do it. And I had two teacher trainings, but the hierarchy in Sat Nam Rasayan, I could only, so I had a middleman between Guru Dev and me, to whom I could speak. So I felt, but I loved the Sat Nam Rasayan. And so the first year of the training, so this teacher, shall I name him?
Sure.
Hari Singh. So he lived in those days, he still lived in Amsterdam with his wife and his kids. And they told me, and we had another teacher coming from Hamburg, and so they had told me that Hari Singh was the spiritual son of Guru Dev, so was very close to Guru Dev, and he was a beautiful Mexican man. And I could see from the first classes that he was very attractive, and he was paying a lot of attention to the young and beautiful girls in the class. And other people also saw that. But I thought, okay, this is okay, there is nothing wrong. But then the next year, there was one of the female students, and she came to the first class of the next year. And then after the class, she called me and she said, I have to quit. Can you pay me my money back, because I cannot come anymore? And then I asked her why she couldn't. And then, and she's okay that I tell her story. Let me say this. And so she said, well, I thought I would be able to sit in a class with Hari Singh and just be there for the Sat Nam Rasayan, but I just can't, because I cannot cope with his hypocrisy. And I see that. And so she said, she first didn't want to tell it, but then I said, is there something that's important for the other students to know? Because at that moment, I already started to think, okay, something happened there. And then she told me about how he seduced her, and he knew, because she was in a divorce situation, and he knew about the divorce. And he asked her, after the first class of the first year, he asked her to come to him after class, and he gave her, and he said, give me your mail address so I can send you a meditation that will help you with your divorce situation. And so they started, and he came to her house, and he brought presents for the children, and so there was sex, and then he was inviting her to come with her to other places, and it lasted for a long time, until she discovered that there were other students, because he told her that he would his marriage was not okay, and he would leave his wife, and so she had the impression that she was building a relationship. But then she realized that he had other, and so she told him, and then he got mad. But so he told her, never tell anybody. So she didn't speak to me until many months later. And so I don't need to tell all the story, but at the moment I spoke to Hari Singh about it, and I informed, because I wanted to inform the Guru Dev and the organization. But Hari said, no, you are my sister, and no, and it was a mistake, and I should not have done it, because he agreed that it happened. But you have to give me a second chance. And I was so stupid that I gave him this second chance. But I didn't know at that moment, but he knew at that moment, that he had sexually abused another student of our training. Also somebody from whom he knew she had relationship problems. She had a healing with him. And so after the healing, he just continued to touch her, and it evolved. And she said, what is this? And he said, this is good for you. And so she gave in. And also her, so she was like completely, and he also told her, don't speak about it. And so, so he knew that when he told me that he made a mistake and he would never do it again. So it still took many months, because in the introduction in my bio, I wrote it was in 2013, but it was only in 2013 that they came to see me after many months, because in another training, they had met each other and they had spoken to each other.
The two women.
The two women. And so the one woman whose relationship, so the second one, she was back again with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend is also Kundalini Yoga teacher. And so they came to see me and talk about the second abuse. And there I was like, I was furious. I was like disgusted also. So I called, I said, this time I go to Guru Dev, because I didn't know that there was also abuse with Guru Dev.
Right, that he was the real guy wielding the power. Keep going. And so each attempt, so the women, we were working together on healing. We had, but they didn't want to go and have a court case. Yeah, we are in 2013. Yeah. So they didn't go to they didn't have the two ladies. Yeah. So there was no court case. It's just. But they wrote letters to Guru Dev, to Hari Singh, they asked for recognition of the harm done, and I asked, okay, the next year's training, Hari Singh should not be teaching. He needs he needs to be supported. He needs to go in therapy. And I told him, you need to go in therapy, because we heard, we do not have names of other women, but there was a lot of rumors in Belgium and in Holland about other women involved, and there had been cases in Paris. So this was not the first time. So, but I didn't. So I still thought that Guru Dev would like react to this, but no, nothing. And then they had a meeting in Amsterdam where I could not be at the meeting, and I was all the time insisting on just acknowledgement. Like, this cannot happen, and something like an ethical code, because I had contact with EPS from Kundalini, with Guruka, who's still in charge in those days. And she supported me to say, yes, you have to ask for acknowledgement. But EPS had nothing to say about Sat Nam Rasayan, as it is a separate entity. It's completely outside of the Kundalini Yoga structure since Bhajan died. So she was in support with me, and then apparently when the training was going to start the next year, and I was waiting for the teachers, because Guru Dev had given us another teacher, but Hari Singh would continue to teach in other countries. And I said, it's going to happen in other countries too. So they gave us another teacher, and I was waiting for the teacher, and nobody turned up. And I was there with new level 1 students, and with a big group of level 2 students. And so no teacher turned up. Hold on. You organized a Sat Nam Rasayan training, and nobody had said anything about the issues. No. And nobody told me that. And then nobody said that the lead trainers aren't going to show up for the training. No. You organized and collected money for. Yeah. So I tried to contact the teachers. I tried to contact the wife of the teacher, because this was a teacher from Hamburg who was supposed to come. I thought he was a friend. So nobody answered. So I sent a mail to the one who is in between me and Guru Dev. It was a weekend training, Saturday level 1, Sunday level 2. So Saturday night at midnight, there is a mail from this in-between person who says, oh, Ravinder, oh, I forgot to tell you, but you know, Guru Dev has decided that the energy in Belgium is not okay anymore. And that you should send the students now. They can go to trainings in Holland or in Germany or everywhere they want to go. But Belgium for 2 years is a no-go zone. And we thank you very much for all your services, for everything you did. Bye-bye. Wow. That is so manipulative. Disgusting. It's disgusting. And where is the respect towards the students?
So
It's
I
so
want,
manipulative. It's such a wielding of power. It's called stonewalling. And I think there's some other narcissistic names as well as sociopathic names for what this behavior is, folks. But in a moment when that happens to Ravinder or to Else at that time, remember, she's organizing for the entire country of Belgium, right? And it's been an active group, right, for long periods of time. And then suddenly, after these abuse victims speak out, and the leader of that area speaks out on their behalf and makes a stand that says, this teacher shouldn't come back and be a teacher training here. Instead of addressing that like healthy leadership should, Guru Dev Singh tells his minions that Belgium is a no-go zone because the energy is off, and they don't have the decency to communicate that ahead of time. If that was an actually legitimate response, if it were, you would communicate that ahead of time before collecting a bunch of students, having someone as dedicated as Else to collect those students, pay money, and then just say, oh, the students are fine, but they just tell them to go to another country. That's so
yeah,
disrespectful. I'm
yeah,
I'm
because,
so
you know,
disgusted.
without any empathy for the student, because, you know, such a training, you plan it in your agenda a year before. So, and all other trainings they have started. So it was, so I was,
and not only that, but what it does is it creates a wedge between the relationship you have and all those people who trusted you to give them money, because you know it's illuminating.
Well, for the, yeah,
It's
but
an
I think,
attempt. I'm not saying
yeah,
that's what
it's an
happened
attempt.
because you
Yeah,
have a relationship with those people. What I'm saying is from a
yeah,
manipulative, narcissistic point of view, what that does is it bypasses your your direct trust, and
yeah,
basically says, oh, we think the energy's off there. Now it puts doubt in people's minds, like what is actually going on, instead of
yeah.
having this leadership
And
show up
then they
to.
had the guts after 2 years to contact me and ask me if I still had a mailing list of those people. Because, you know, in Sat Nam Rasayan, you don't only have students, you also have patients. So I had a big list of people who wanted to come. And so they said, we want to start Sat Nam Rasayan again. Can you please send us the mailings list you have?
This is after 2 years after stonewalling
Yes,
you,
2
of
or
not
3
talking to you.
years.
That's
Yeah,
so disgusting. I'm
yeah.
so disgusted right now. This is leadership of Guru Dev Singh, the
But
predator, the
then
super predator.
at that moment, I didn't know all the rest. But okay,
I
I
know.
think
I'm
that's
just
it. That,
saying that, but this is my point. We're getting a picture into your experience with them. If y'all don't know, go listen to Olivia's broadcast,
yeah.
and you guys can hear the super predator that was Guru Dev Singh, who was preying on underage women while sleeping with their mother. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, but I think from my personal story, maybe that's everything. Most
Well, no,
important
I mean,
things.
so yeah,
Yeah,
so you get that happens. Belgium becomes a no zone.
yeah, and then I
You
still
just start to recede.
continue.
Yeah, what happens? Like, how do
Well,
you?
I was, in fact, I was personally. So without looking at everything that happened to the women and to the group and to the students, I was happy to be out of this Sat Nam Rasayan. It felt like a relief because I could not function in this very paternalistic hierarchical structure. This is not a, I loved the practice and I still continued after that to go into these deep meditations, which I now know, I still love it, but I now look at it differently.
Mm.
I know why I love it. And I still think it's very healthy, but you cannot use it as an escape. You cannot use it as an escape for real life. And this is what I saw a lot, or what I realized I was doing a lot. It's like, if you're occupied with all this, you do not need to look at all the other stuff of your life. It's an easy escape.
Interesting.
High.
Interesting.
Well, that's my experience. Huh? So I continued in Africa and being as representative of Belgium, I had all these meetings with the national federations. So I had all these international contacts. And this is where I think I met so many people at the top of the organization that I know now that I would not have known if I had not done all that I have done. Yeah. Working in Africa. And then they asked me to even they wanted me to start a yoga festival in Africa. And I felt like, oh, no, a yoga festival in Africa. You cannot have people travel from one country to another. There is no money to do that. So the only ones who would show up is very rich Americans and then the local people. But that's not an African yoga festival. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. It doesn't work. So I continued, and then I started in 2017. I read the article of Philippe Deslippe, From Maharaj to Mahantantric.
How did you find that? Like, if you were in the midst of, you weren't doing Sat Nam Rasayan, but you're still doing Kundalini Yoga.
A friend of mine. So in fact, the person with whom I started this Africa project, he sent it to me.
Okay.
He was always more critical than I was. And he's an artist, and he was much more like, when I would say, oh, no, this Kriya, you have to do it this way, and you have to follow the timings. He would like play with it, and I would say, so.
And so he said, when was that article written? When did Philip?
Well, it was in 2012 or 2013 that he wrote it,
earlier.
But so I read it only in 2016 or 17, and I read this, and it was like, oh my God, and I've been telling all these classes in all these, I've said, this is an ancient technology. So I started to realize, why did I accept this without investigating it? Where was my critical mind? And so I started asking questions. So I wrote to all these lead trainers that I knew. I wrote to Krishna, for example, but also to others. And I said, what is this article? Why is it not brought forward and discussed? And what can we learn from this?
Why isn't this in Teacher Training 101, folks?
And so I asked this question, and then started my experience that I already had in Sat Nam Rasayan, silence as an answer. I started to have it in the Kundalini Yoga world. So every question that was a bit difficult to answer, and I got, once you start, once your brain starts to work again, you start seeing things and you start asking questions, and also at the national federations. So I started asking questions like, I was still in these meetings, like, why are all the leaders in this community Sikhs? And why do they all have long beards and wear white turbans? While when I look at the yoga classes here in Belgium, none of us is like that. None of us. So this gap, this is a huge gap. Who do we, because it's always about serving. And then I said, my feeling is that those we need to serve are those who need the yoga. But this community of yogis, so I'm not talking about the 3HO community, I'm talking about people in all the towns all over the world who go to yoga classes and have never heard about 3HO, have never heard about KRI, and even less about Sikh Dharma. So I said, these are the people we need to serve. These are the people that want to come to yoga class once a week to work their body, to work their mind, to have some spiritual experience. And these are the people we serve. So our reflection should be about this. But the leadership and the things they are talking about, it's an immense gap. So I was already at that time, I was saying, and then they looked at me. I said, it must be me, because I felt like I was the only one asking these questions, and there was no answer.
Nothing.
No,
you just got blank stares.
It was like blank stares.
Empty.
Like, what is she talking about?
And so, silence as an answer. I want to just highlight that silence as an answer. That as if being neutral and being silent is as if being silent is neutral. Yeah. And it is such a long historical myth that that is embedded into our identity as Kundalini yogis. And as
Yeah.
children of this Dharma, the silence is an answer.
So this article from Philip was in fact the trigger. And
Okay.
then came the Akal security issue at the Mexican border and the
Mm.
petition that was launched by Los Angeles Kundalini Yoga teacher.
Mm.
And that for me closed the door.
Mm.
So I contacted her and I tried to also have the petition communicated here in Europe. And then seeing that I think only 600 or 700 teachers signed that petition. And I thought, awareness, the yoga of awareness. The question was, so there were Mexican refugees when they came at the border of the US. So there was a separation between parents and children. And so Akal Security, the security company that is owned by the overall organization, they were involved in these operations.
Yeah, and to be a little more clear, we had billion-dollar contracts with the federal government that's known as ICE, and ICE is basically the hostile immigration police that separates children and their families. And we discovered, this yoga student in LA did this petition, discovering that we had multi-year billion-dollar contracts. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So when she reached out and she went to the Khalsa Council, and it took more than a year before they came with a statement. So it was again the same thing. So you ask a very simple question: are our yoga activities funded with money from this company? And is this company that is linked to the yoga, are they still going to sign new contracts and with ICA? And are they continuing their contracts? So there was very simple questions, and it took more than a year before a statement came. And then, so that closed for me, that closed the door. So I said, and then it was very difficult because the students who came to the yoga class, they didn't understand why I wanted to stop. I just said, there is something in this yoga. I was fully, I embraced it 200%. But now I feel there is something in there that I cannot relate to. And so I'm not honest if I'm going to teach it. I cannot teach it anymore because there is too many questions in my own head and it doesn't feel good anymore. So so I was really, I feel now that I was lucky that I stepped out in 2018. And then I always say now to people, because also in these town hall meetings, I hear these leaders who want to go into the board. They say, "This is the best yoga. This saved my life. There is nothing better than this." How do you know? I always say, stop for 1 year. But 1 year, 1 month is not enough because you're addicted. You will miss it.
Definitely not enough. You definitely have to stop for at least a year. And I remember the years that my system was telling me to stop, and it started by stopping teaching, and then it was stop practicing entirely and to not do any of that. And it took a little while before my system started coming online.
Yes.
But it quite literally is like having parts of your brain come back online.
That's it. That's it. And the critical thinking to take its place again, the numbness to leave you, and the healthy, happy, holy
rhetoric that props you up. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, yeah.
So this all comes out in 2018, Els. I mean, you're starting to pay attention. You'd already had these horrible silencing experiencing. Now you're reaching out to the Kundalini Yoga teachers that are in head positions. You're realizing you're also getting stonewalled in silence. Nobody knows how to address these, quote, hard issues. And then the ICE thing, and you just realize, wow, these people in leadership, there's a huge gap between who they think they're serving and who they are and whatever's going on.
Mm-hmm. So I just dropped it.
You just backed away
and I thought, and when you were reading my bio, I thought, okay, I've been stepping out of things many times and then coming back. Okay, it's because it's not, my work is not finished yet. So I thought I would never go back, because why would I go back? So somebody else took over the presidency for the Belgian Federation. And so it was in 2020 when Premka's book came out that I don't remember how I knew this. But anyway, I ordered it first online and I read it and I thought, yes, this is the moment. So I contacted people from the Belgian Federation and said, hey, wow, look at this. And the woman who had taken over from me, in fact, she had also heard about the thing in the ICA thing, and she was fed up and she said, I don't want to be in this anymore. And I said, you know what? I take over again, because I feel like a new drive, because maybe change is possible, maybe transparency is possible. Because now, if all these people start speaking, start talking, I'm interested. I'm interested to work towards justice and to have and to name the harm done and to see what is the damage. Only one woman, two women, how many? And then the children and so
I have two questions before you continue. Did you practice personally between
No.
2018? So you just completely dropped all association and all daily practice?
Yes.
And
I
did you
even stopped my personal practice before I stopped teaching. And then they almost trapped me in Sierra Leone, in Africa again. So I went to visit a friend there who is mindfulness, and she does also other types of yoga. And so I visited her in October 2019, and I was already out. I had nothing to do with Kundalini Yoga anymore, but she was teaching yoga or mindfulness, I don't remember. And I was there, and she told her students, she's Kundalini. Oh, we want to have Kundalini Yoga. So they convinced me, and I gave a yoga class. And then you see, this is the thing, you give this class, these people have never done it before, and they are in heaven. They love it. They love it. And they said, we want to do this. We want, and I don't know if you ever heard of the level 0 training. It was given by a man, it was even presented during European Yoga Festival. I forgot the name of the man. He's originally Dutch. But so he created, and KRI was okay with it, a level 0 training, which is a level 1, but stripped off. So the only thing that's left is the basic yoga and very, very basic lifestyle thing, but really, really very basic. And so I had a discussion with him already when I was still in, to also implement it in Kenya, because I started seeing that disturbance things in Africa. I didn't want to do it again. So I prepared it, and then my flight had to leave on the 18th of March, and the 17th of March, COVID was there, 2020. I couldn't leave. If I had taken the airplane, I would have had to stay in Sierra Leone for months and months. And so I didn't go. But that was March 2020. So you see,
right?
So a few months,
still all connected.
So I had this time. I had this extra time. I was not doing this level 0 thing. So I had time to listen to your uncomfortable conversations. And this is also, and of course, I made time for it, but I could do it. Not many people can do it, because I also stopped working by then. So I had this space, and I really felt for myself, but also I felt like a responsibility, as I had been telling all these lies without knowing it were lies. I felt like here I can do something. It's because if I listen to all these things, and then I realized that listening to a conversation of 3 hours, who can do it? Yeah. And that's why I contacted you and asked you if you would agree to contact the people and ask if they agree to have the website made. And so in 2021, I started making the website because I realized the vastness of the abuse. People know, there were a few women who were sexually abused, and maybe were they really abused, or did they How did they have a
Is it just
relationship with him?
slander?
Yeah.
You know, just all,
Yeah,
yeah, did they
or
choose
it's just
that? Did they,
rights.
was it consensual? You know, just
Yes.
all the ways. And again, these are all coping mechanisms that are quite embedded into the teachings and into the ethos of Kundalini Yogadom. And I say that very intentionally because again, hearing this whole thing, like choosing what teachers, this is one of the ways that I would quote warn my students when they would get into the teacher training circuit, is I would say, make sure you're resonating with the teacher. You know, there are very abusive lineages here. And I would just say that because there are very abusive lineages here. What I didn't yet know is how the collective source of it all was so rooted in such predatory abuse that I don't think there's any non-abusive lineage anymore, but that's my takeaway. When you tell this, it makes sense to me that you would be reinvigorated in 2020 because you were the organizer of a country and you're hosting. There's a responsibility. There's a sense of responsibility if one's actually a leader of something and giving something that they genuinely think is meaningful and valuable. There is a responsibility you take when you take someone else's money and host something so that other people get to partake in that feast, whatever that is. And so as a organizer and a leader of your area, to have students be abused and harmed, and then to come up against a system that isn't addressing it, it's very, very traumatizing. And it happens more often than we think, whether it's with the corporation one works for, or whether it's the family institution you come from. It could be the military for some people. It could be a corporate world of 35 years in government and yada, yada. But in this case for you, it was 10 years of dedication to, you know, serving people in their consciousness and organizing events that help people feel better in their bodies and minds, at least so you think. And so to have that interaction and then to have 2 years of kind of fading away and pulling it apart a little bit and to not be associated with it. Then in 2020, you're like, I'm back in the Federation. Finally, it's a time for transparency. Wow, there's the potential. The Facebook group was inspiring because you're hearing from people that were in the 70s all the way up. So there's puzzle piecing. I'm sure your researcher mind was all lit up because there's people from all different regions. And these are the things you had been feeling and thinking for the last decade of your life. Like, wow, that part doesn't make sense. Oh, let me just focus on my lane. Oh, well, that didn't feel right. Well, let me just not do that and focus here. And that this is one of the coping mechanisms that we all have used to survive this cult. Let me just focus on this little lane. Let me just work with this teacher because I can believe in this teacher. And so we put our time and attention in this person, but we warn people about the Gurmukhs or the Guru Devs or the whatever, but we secretly warned them while we still are promoting a body of work that's rooted in that predatory behavior.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. That's it. And it takes a while before you see that.
Yes.
So
and before you can, that emotional distance, I think, is what I'm pointing out. You had that distance. So you had more ability to see it for what it is when you felt like you were getting dicked around again. Like here you are in the whole reconciliation committees. You knew at one point you're like, I'm being used here.
Because and it's the information that you need to help the processing. So listening to all these different stories, that was needed for me to realize, wow. And also to realize, how do you communicate about this? Because people don't want to hear you. Because in Belgium, they didn't like what I was doing. They said, leave this alone. Because let us just continue with our yoga. Because I stepped down back again as a president, and there was a new president, and they organized the Belgian Yoga Festival. It's fantastic. It's something I never did, so I applaud them for that. But they were upset with my investigation that I wanted to know and understand what was going on, what was the true history, where and then finally, as I see it now, all this was set up as a cover-up. It was a veil for everything to control people and to make sure that all the things that all the abuses could happen, the criminal activities could take place, and the money could be raised, and the
Laundered.
exploitation could happen, and everything that was there. So there is inherent in this yoga technology is the capacity to control people. This yoga didn't create awareness. It's not a yoga of awareness. With everything that we know now, and many people say it was the yoga of blindness. It was the yoga of deafness. It was the yoga that helped people to hide away, but also that gave no solutions to those who suffered harm and slandered them, and they had no way to go, and they are very, very traumatized. So where were we?
Yeah, no, I mean, everything you're saying, everything you're saying. And so you started listening. You were obviously in the midst of the Facebook group in 2020, the whole Facebook. So you were in the midst of that, and you're paying attention to the different stories. I'm guessing you were on some of the Zoom calls where stories came out with the Tulsa Council. And then in November 2020 is when the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast launched. So you're obviously starting to listen to these long form podcasts, and lots of people listen to the long ones. Some people do it in chunks. Some people just take it all the way in, but do know, and it's part of a part of the intentions and what I've come to learn is we listen when we're ready, and it's just okay, right? Some of us are ready right away and we dive in because these are the things our minds have been wondering about for years to try to put these puzzle pieces together. I know that was the case for me in 2020 when this stuff came out. I had words because I had been emotionally processing this for some time. And it sounds like you had too, for at least the last couple of years, for these incidences to have happened with leadership the way that they have with you. And for you to have formed the relationships with some of the top legacy teachers in different regions of the world speaks to the level of distortion you're talking about. Because if you can go to some of the highest sources of the knowledge that's disseminated, and all you get is blank looks and uncertainty on how to address something that any leader should be able to address, because this is what it deals when you're dealing with complex situations of human beings, and you get nothing from them. So that gave you a sense of like, I don't know what's going on, but something's not right here. So in 2020, when it all comes out, now you're like, thank goodness, at least now it's out in the open. So Els has this voice of reason that shows up, like maybe everybody's going to come to the table again. And so you're listening, but I'd like to bring us to that point where you start creating the Kundalini Yoga abuse site, because not everybody's going to listen for 3 hours. There needs to be a little bit more coherence between this article that got published in 1980 or the Time magazine, whatever, and an interview that you just heard on my podcast or on Mina's podcast on Instagram. And you're putting these puzzle pieces and you're like, yeah, we need to have these clips. That's what I saw that website doing. You were trying to coordinate all this content.
To find a structure, to make it,
to make it make sense.
Yeah, and to say that there is child abuse, there is sexual abuse, there is homophobia, there is business fraud, there is slandering, there is this, there is that. So, and it continues. So to give a structure so that the people can, and then in their
organization, so you could see all the range of the types of abuse and for how long and how many years it had spanned. And that it wasn't something that could just be brushed under the rug, that it wasn't just some women that were speaking out, slandering. We're talking about a long history. That's what your website set out to do.
Yeah, and in those days, so I was still, but I felt the resistance from people. So from the Belgian community, like I was alone. Nobody feels like supporting this. Because they say, what are you doing? This is not our stuff. This is in the States, and Sat Nam Rasayan, it's not the same organization, so just drop it and let's focus on seeing how we can spread the teachings more and focus on the future. And the same, in fact, in the National Federation. So I know there were a few I don't remember the name, the countries, but there were only a few countries who really saw the Book of Premka as an opportunity for change. And most of them were really annoyed and angry and were calling us slanderers, and I've been called names like blurb. And finally, they threw me out there too.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I had only seen, mostly
that's
have
okay.
seen, most leaders were silent in Europe. And I only
Yeah.
saw Shiv Chudden's response, which was basically a non-response, and his horrible YouTube response. And in general, yeah, we just mostly got silence.
And then a few months ago, Ram Singh started to communicate.
Finally,
And
that's
I tried,
the teacher out of France.
a teacher from France, who was also one of our seva teachers in Africa. And I tried to contact him because I saw he had not had the time to listen to everything. And I wanted to, in fact, to partner with him to say, I have a lot of information, but he didn't receive it well, called me a racist. So.
Yeah, and he's one of the few Black teachers, much less,
Yeah.
Only French teacher over there. And
I don't know where it ended up. I haven't followed because
yeah, and this is a year later, right? This is after the, this
it was
isn't
very
when
late.
all the voices came out. This isn't the 2020 reckoning
No,
moment.
it was very late.
This is way after when Sikh
it was
Dharma
after my website, so it was
exactly. So after the report, probably, I mean, we're talking about when reparations probably were coming through, like when some of these teachers start waking up, just like witnessing Guru Singh rebrand himself from being a long time personal by the side of Yogi Bhajan to suddenly in 2020, he had many teachers, not just Yogi Bhajan. And, and just the way that different teachers are waking up, like, oh, wow, well, I better stay with the times if I want students to pay attention. Who is the CEO of 3HO?
Siri Sant. She asked me to be part of the Compassionate Reconciliation Commission. And so I ended up there, and I wasn't there for a year or something.
What was your group focused on specifically?
We were called, I don't know what we were called. We were called something like the leaders without a job or something. I don't remember.
So there were all these different committees that were formed essentially.
Yeah.
So one
so
could have
there
been
were
like
the
the Yogi Bhajan
survivors.
survivors. Yeah, tell us.
So there were the children, second gen. There were survivors, there were the women survivors, there was the yogic community, there was the Sikh Dharma community. Well, I don't know the others. And we were a group of people, like there was Krishna Kaur. So hello, there is Krishna in my group. So there was Krishna, there was Jay Gopal, who used to be the coordinator of the national federations. So for some people, like for her, it was like very weird to call her somebody who is recognized as a leader, but has no leadership, while she was responsible for all the national federations. So she had a very broad group of people she was connected with. So and then we had a very nice group of six people permanently, and a very broad spread, like Krishna, who is like not really, or wanting to keep everything as it was, and rever, and wanting to, and she always said, just let us meditate together, that will solve the thing. And then I was on the side of the survivors, and others were in between. So, but it was a nice group. But what were we doing? Where were we going? And at the end of 2022, I had started writing my book by then, of course. And I felt like, okay, I'm just wasting my time and energy here. And I don't believe, and I've also had a feeling like this is window dressing. We are used as an excuse to say, you see, we have this compassionate reconciliation. And there were just outcomes. Is a Canadian company who is guiding that process of compassionate reconciliation. They have very good intentions, and I think they did very good things, but it all stayed very, small.
Insular.
Yeah. So I stepped out. One of the things I did from the start, so it's called the Compassionate Reconciliation Commission. And I asked, where is the word truth? because normally you have Truth and Compassionate Reconciliation Commission, like Desmond Tutu started in South Africa. No, the word compassion is, it's just truth and reconciliation. Sorry for the confusion. So normally it's truth and reconciliation. And we only have
compassionate reconciliation.
Reconciliation, and we have no truth. And the answer I got was, we cannot, in our community, we have different truths. So we cannot have the word truth in there because different people have different truths. Related to harm done, no. Harm done is harm done. Damage done is damage done. And restorative justice, it is about centering, focusing on the damage that is done, not looking for who shall we punish, but how shall we restore the damage that is done and define the damage done.
And listen to the damage.
And listen,
done.
so define it, name it. That's the first step that Desmond Tutu defined in his process, is name the harm done. And this is what I was always saying in these CRCs, is we are not doing that. We are organizing ourselves. We were all the time organizing ourselves. But we were not talking. The elephant in the room was very lonely.
That's right.
And then when the women started talking, when there were the Zoom calls, it was not promoted by the organizations. So it's not
and even
consistent.
Now, even the language is oftentimes allegations still, as opposed to, these are people's stories of harm. There's their experiences of harm. Allegations is putting it off as if you're not sure if you believe them. And when those reconciliation committees were being formed, I remember speaking to one of the ladies about it. I was in Phoenix and it was, like November 2021 or something. And I had to just drop into my body and be like, you know what? This is a total 3HO move. They are creating committees to make us feel like we're important and that our input matters. And they're going to have us do this and it's not going to go anywhere. No way am I giving my emotional energy to this. No. I value what you're trying to do here, reconciliation group. But no, I think we're being asked to fondle ourselves and call it something else. And anyway, your experience in that group, as well as other people I heard in the different committees, what have those committees accomplished? What has any of it accomplished in service of the survivors?
Yeah, there is, but then it's not triggered by that. But there is now the reparations program, as we know, since.
But that didn't come from the reconciliation committee.
No, it didn't. It didn't.
Oh, that came from a group of survivors threatening to sue.
Yeah,
ladies and gentlemen, just for the record. And same thing with the therapy reimbursement. That didn't come. That didn't come from the reconciliation committee groups. You just got to wonder, what have they spent that entire? What has that reconciliation group actually supported in moving? I saw them announcing it at their last solstice. As if these circles are meaning something.
Yeah, but I think it has sense. And now I'm taking my notes of these meetings. One of the women, she said, we learned from just outcomes to communicate authentically.
Wait, you learn from just, this is one of the SSSC board member running?
One of the candidates. Huh?
One of the candidates, that's what I meant. One of the candidates running for the board of the entire organization, just for the record. She says we learn from just outcomes how to what?
Yeah, how to communicate authentically and how to relate to each other and how to listen to each other. But it's true, Guru Nishan. It's true. Because this is something, if they never learned, there is no listening in the community. There is only obedience. There is only suffering. There is only, nobody is listening to, everybody is so much pull. And this circle work, I believe it's very necessary. But I don't feel it is helping what we thought when I stepped into the Compassionate Reconciliation Commission, I thought we were going to work on the harm done, define it, and then see together how can we fix it. But this is not what we were doing. What they were doing, and it is necessary, is they learn how to listen to each other. And they learn how to be authentic and dare to speak their truth and not be slandered for it. It doesn't work always, but sometimes it works. I was very happy to see in our small group how we could communicate in a very decent way, thanks to the methods that Just Outcomes brought to us. So there is something valuable in there, but it's not serving the goal of restorative justice directly. And this is what they told me. You have to be patient. Yeah, but my level of patience is not very high. So I think it was better that I stepped out.
What you just said around learning to communicate and that how important that was in these circles, and that they had only learned to obey. It's such a profound thing. I hope you go back and rewind and hear what else just said, because for a candidate that's running for the board to acknowledge that, right, in their own awareness of what they learned, that's beautiful. And you've been practicing the yoga awareness for 50 fucking years.
Yeah,
like,
that's
Jesus, you know, and you're painting your organization as a trauma-informed organization, and you're not, right? You're not the pathway to the Aquarian age, because you're just now learning how to communicate in a small group.
Yeah,
because
the fact
of a
that she told
facilitation
it,
expert, right? Because of the group.
So this is said, and I don't want to blame. I'm grateful for certain of these candidates who have bravely spoken out true things. But in fact, it's proving that the conscious communication level 2 is not, yeah.
I forgot, conscious communication is actually a training.
It's a training. It's a whole week training.
That
and
our
nobody,
legacy teachers have to host.
Yeah. Yeah. Those who are now learning from Just Outcomes how to
communicate,
listen to each other, and be authentic in their communication and respectful, which is good. So I don't want to throw it all away. I think there are very nice things happening. And somebody also of these board members who runs for the election, he said it's going to take 10, 20 years. And I think he's right. If they get there, if it can survive as long, but before everybody, but I see movement. So I'm rather positive in the fact that I see that I know a number of these people, and I see how they have evolved over these last 3 years. And one of the things I also saw in this meeting with all these, maybe for the people who listen, so I'm talking about meetings that were held to present the candidates for the new, that will step into the board of directors of the overall organization. And so in these meetings, they were all talking about what happened to the community since 2020. And then I want to shout, no, it started in 1968 when he arrived. It started then. It's not since. And one of the women, she said, the earthquake that we experienced all in 2020. And then I want to say, you needed an earthquake to wake up. Many people had storms going on. So Rishinots has been shouting for years, the Waka world of Yogi Bhajan. So there were people out there who were shouting and nobody was listening. So the earthquake of Premka's book was needed. But it's not since then that there is a crisis. Now, there was a crisis all the time. Well, and nobody has the reflection that these teachings were the teachings that made them fall asleep. These were the teachings that brought them into this denial, into this position of not seeing what was happening to their children. These were the teachings that allowed them to convince themselves that it is good to send your children to schools into India at ages of 2, 3, 4. These teachings, you are going to promote them. And they still say, this is our mission. While I say, work on yourself. Stop doing all this and go in therapy, all of you.
All of you.
Before, but they do not even have this reflection.
Yeah.
And this is what I don't understand. They don't even have the reflection. So they keep on saying, we are here. They keep on saying, we are the teachers, because he made us teachers. He did not come to make students. He came to make teachers. And they still behave like teachers of this technology that made them blind and deaf for years, and still does it, because it did the same with me. He did not have to teach me to make me numb, to make me non-critical. It was the teachings that did it. It was the fact that I went to a level 1 teacher training where we slept 4 hours a night, where we ate very little, and where we did very, very heavy kriyas. And all that while you have a full-time job and you give yoga classes and you organize things. This is what the teachings do, not for people who just go to a yoga class once every week. No. They say, it's far away. We never knew Yogi Bhajan. It's a very long time ago. And okay, but what do they know about the abuse? They know, okay, there were maybe some women who were sexually assaulted by Yogi Bhajan. This is what they know. That's everything they know. This is why we partnered to get all this together, to have a book on the market, so that people can have a look at the full story and then decide for themselves what they do with it. So they can, if they want to continue teach yoga, for me, it's fine. It's fine, as long as they are aware that there is a capacity in this technology and there is a danger in this technology, that you are numbed, that you fall asleep. So you have
and
to
then
be,
it's designed that way, that it's actually
and it's
designed to help you to
designed
disconnect from your own will and to shoot into your own super consciousness. And you have to know that these things are built in. So it's not so simple as just moving on because that teacher was a bad apple. No, no, no. And this is, again, why I knew that the efforts you were putting into what I've called the web, the predatory web in this podcast over the last couple of years, just listening to the stories emerged predatory distortions, predatory patterns. And so this podcast is one example of a web of predatory patterns that emerged through different people telling their stories. And we've only told like 40 of them. We're talking about there's thousands out here, folks, right? So I'm glad this podcast has helped and all the other things that are out, but there's far more stories that are helping to put the pieces of the puzzle. So name some of the other types of sources, because there was obviously Mina's podcast, which preceded this one. Which, for those of you that don't know, you know, the intentions that came from the Uncomfortable Conversations started with her intentions. She had a list of intentions as a Kundalini Yoga student and teacher, and she started doing interviews on her Instagram, and I interviewed with her. And around that time, she was ending, and I said, I'm going to start a podcast, and do you mind if I borrow your intentions? So I just made more, but you know, all that time was just a bunch of us coming forward and sharing stuff. And you, Els, were reading it all. You were reading it all. You had already read Phyllis de Slips many years ago. He was active in the conversation with some more stuff, right?
Yeah, I saw. I took it all in, and then I felt like, okay, I have to do something with it, because it would be just a waste if I would not use this. So what is in there? So there are indeed there is input from Mina Bahadori's interview she did in the early days in 2020. There is Rachel Bernstein. She did interviews there, and then you started with the Uncomfortable Conversations when. And then there are the books. There is the book of Premka. There is the Inner Circle book of Peter Blatchley, which also has a great source of information to just grasp the the
History.
atmosphere, and the history and the atmosphere of how it was, the positive and the less positive things of living in this community. And then there is one of the second gens who gave me access to the library of all the documents she had, letters that were sent to her parents, related to the boarding school, related to the food programs, related when Bhajan said, okay, this summer the children will only get 1 meal a day, and this type of thing.
Also the original lawsuit.
The lawsuits, both the lawsuits and also lawsuits on business fraud and on drugs issues, drug delicts, and on the jewelry scams and all these things. So
we're talking about the gem fraud, the jewelry scams, the marijuana and the arms stuff, the FBI raids, are covering all those spans that happened over several spans of time. And what's so interesting about the way Els has done this is she's sourced these things just like any good academic or researcher. You know, one thing is cited from one academic paper or from one source. And then because she's listening to my interviews, somebody might have brought up that same story in one interview, and then somebody else brought up that same story in a different interview. And so it's multiple accounts of the same time period or same incident that you've brought together in this book.
Yeah, and then it's still very, very, it's just drawing a picture of something that's much bigger. So there are 100 books.
It's like a pin in the larger scope. But why it's so magnificent and why it's so necessary for 3HO specifically is it's so much. The dark history is like an avalanche, and it's like a tsunami of info. And so just going back to what you just said about these board candidates, many of them, even if they're pro healing and support, haven't listened to all the stories because it's just too much, right? There's so much to listen to. There's no time because they're busy needing to spread the teachings and the technology to the world. And so when we pause and say, have I actually listened? I know lots and lots of people that are choosing not to listen yet. And that's fine because we're all in our own process. But you can't come up with your slogans like the teachings are fine, it helps me so much, if you haven't actually stopped and let these stories in.
You base your decision to answer this question, can I separate the teacher from the teachings, if you base it on information that is very, very light. So if you have read the book, and this is what Lydia, for example, this woman from Kenya, Kundalini Yoga, she, in her review, she just puts the question. She says, I have no answer. I do not know yet how I will process this. I will need time. And I will talk to it with my peers, etc. And this is what needs to happen, is that people for themselves reflect on, but then it's to give them a well-informed decision, to allow them to have a better informed decision. So what I try to do in the book is not to take a stance. Now, by now you know my stance, so, but still I try to stay with the facts from the interviews, from the newspapers, from the works of historians, and also try to draw a historical context of how it was in the 60s and the 70s. And then there is Yogi Bhajan's teachings himself, because they are also an important source of information. So to link everything what people have experienced, link it to his words.
And his then lectures, she's actually transcribed some of the lectures and put them in there in reference to the types of things he was propagating.
And then what people saw when they were close to him. For example, Marina, who lived for 3 years in the last years of his life, who lived close, and she came from Europe. She was not a Sikh Dharma person, and she just is dropped there because she is married by Bhajan, and she's dropped in Española, and so her view on from an outsider, because I think once you are inside, this is the thing, and this is why I don't want to blame anyone who's still inside, because as long as you are in, it's so difficult to see what is really happening.
Yeah,
you have to step out to see it, because for the outside world it's obvious. It's obvious for the outside world. It's obvious that's a cult. And I remember when I went to teacher trainings, and then when people said, "You are in a cult," and of course I was not. No, I was not in a cult. No. I was. But it's very difficult to see it when you're inside. So
which is why this book is so necessary, because one of the things that I think is so heavy of a weight to bear for many of us, and I hear this from a lot of listeners, people know harm has occurred, but they don't even know where to begin to look and read and research. There's, it's, you go into a Facebook group and it's overwhelming. It's like, oh my God, where do I start? And you look at my list of podcasts and it's like 53-hour episodes. Like, these things are overwhelming, right? And so how do we get this information that needs to be gotten to people who need to know it, which is anybody who's continually either practicing or propagating? Because we have to be able to see it for what it is. We have to be able to make our own conclusion. As you said, if you choose to carry on teaching or practicing, that's on you, but get all the information so that you're fully informed and you can feel all this before you carry on with the platitudes that were given to us as a way to carry on teachings.
Yeah, and you will teach from a more aware perspective.
From a more aware place. You actually take it all in. It's just too easy in the trauma healing process to just bury it and be like, I believe the women.
Yeah,
but I'm going to keep teaching. I believe the women, though. It's really bothersome because nobody's actually listening to the actual harm, and they want to just carry on to teach the teachings. But I believe the women. Oh, and I think we should serve Black people too. Sorry.
Yeah, and this is in fact for me a missed opportunity. But okay, there is still other opportunities that will come. But from the start, they could have opened up from within these stories, 3HO and KRI. They could have done this. So now one of the candidates says he wants to do it. He wants to bring the stories into the open, which is good. And everybody, and this is good, pro-Bhajanist, everybody says, library of teachings, the teachings have to stay, which is also good, because it's in the teachings that is the proof that it is a cult. They don't realize it, but it's in there. Everything is in there. But what I want to say is, if from the beginning they would have, then they would not have had to do what they have done now. So 3HO and KRI, so before the websites, it was all white people, turbanized, and so fully in their uniform. And so as from 2020, there is an image change. So Yogi Bhajan has disappeared from the forefront, and there is colors and people of color. So it's a completely different, but inside the teachings, he's still exactly there. Yeah. This is not working. This is not consistent. And this is what Harinam, in fact, was saying, like, there is an inconsistency in your behavior because you cannot do that. So there has the only way, and this is what this one candidate was saying, the only way is to open up, is to put it onto the table, and from there you start.
I can't agree more that it's so disingenuous to look at the 3HO or the Kundalini site and to see like the orange sun, the original 3HO brand is gone, which fine, companies rebrand all the time, but to have it be so different and, so light washed and not addressing how these harms have been bred in our community for decades, so things are alluded to. And so what I hear you saying around this, like the pro-Bhajanist, at least he's talking the truth. At least he's saying that's incongruent. You can't say you embody the teachings and then want to take the teacher out and call him a rapist. Now, you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to acknowledge what's in plain sight. But the fact that it's just such cognitive dissonance, and it is bothersome.
So I wish I would not have had to spend all this time to write this book, and they had done it themselves from within, but they didn't. So,
and I don't think they're capable. And like you said, one candidate said it's going to take 20 some years.
Maybe
bless all of their hearts, but the amount of depth of corruption.
So there was this one, it was in November, there was this one new book coming out from KRI, and I found that example. So it's a book with a green cover, and it's the title is Finding Peace Within Shattered Pieces. You saw it? So it's Healing Trauma with Yoga and Meditation by Ravinder Kaur, a book from KRI. So on the cover of the book, there is not the word Kundalini anymore. So there is not Yogi Bhajan, and there is even not anymore Kundalini. The book starts with a Rumi quote. So we don't quote Yogi Bhajan anymore on the front cover or on the first page, but then inside the book, it's Yogi Bhajan quotes, of course. And then it is about, so they talk about sexual abuse. So and this is a book that is going to heal persons who suffered from sexual abuse. No word. So Shiv Sharan and Guru Dev Singh have written the forewords. No word about the internal issues on sexual abuse. So they speak about how the world is full of sexual abuse, but not in their organization. And then they call the woman, I don't know her, but they call her an expert. But she is a police officer who had a training to interview victims of sexual assaults. This is
her expert status.
The trauma expert that writes a book, and then the warming up exercise, because I bought this book. You have to buy it if you do investigations. I bought this book. The warming up exercises she starts with, because it's a 40-day set that she did herself, because she was herself traumatized by everything that she had experienced in her job. I can believe that. The warming up, they start with 3 breath of fire exercises for traumatized people. Wow. They do not explain what breath of fire is. But this is the trauma healing expert that writes a book of KRI. And then I see they are lost, because they need to make money. So they need these books to get out. They even say they are good books. Their lead trainers are promoting this as a trauma-informed book.
They're calling themselves trauma-informed without disclosing the long history of systemic trauma that their technology has caused the children and adults that have been born and bred into this community. It's another level of predatory abuse that irks my cells when people say they stand for healing, and then this is the distortion. Because this, let's just qualify it, this is quite literally a lot of the people in the For Hope and Healing group, because this is KRI and 3HO, both CEOs are in the For Healing for Change group. So we're just trying to show that just like American politics, there's the fascist right, and then there's the, other side of the left that are really about as bad. They just show up differently. And it's so important that we learn how to critically think, folks. And it's why I'm a promoter of what this material is that Els has collated together for us, because as Kundalini yogis, as former servers of this technology, and in every one of you who's passive and has given up on this organization decades ago, this is a book that you can recommend for somebody to actually purchase and listen to, that will point them to every source of knowledge that has been disclosed in the last 50 years of this community from the sources themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you know what? So when KRI brought out this book in November 2020.
Oh, even the timing of that is
and then I say, honestly, I even think they didn't reflect on it.
I don't think so.
So the same thing after, the Zoom call of 9 hours with the children in June 2020, or when was it? They send out a mail from the SSSC the next day or a few days afterwards with a banner with Yogi Bhajan picture.
Yeah.
So this is the thing. There is no empathy in. And I think it's the same with the book.
Or continuity.
They don't reflect their own. There is fear. There is a lot of fear. Like, let's not use the word Kundalini on the front page. So because people might have heard about problems of Kundalini. Let's not use a quote of Yogi Bhajan on the first page, because that might frighten people. Yeah. But then they are not, again, not consistent, because they act out of, and we need to have books because we need money, because we lose people. So our revenue is, so I even don't think that it's purposeful, that there is another plan there than fear to lose customers. And they could avoid all this if they were open themselves. I'm convinced if from within they would say this, and the was it the Ashtanga Yoga? I don't remember. I think it was in the Ashtanga Yoga that from within the organizations they brought out the stories. They said, and this is what this one man in the candidate was saying, we have to bring out the stories, anonymized if needed, for those who don't want their name, but we have to be open.
That's right. We have to see it.
And so maybe, yeah, I invite them to put the book on their
invite them to put
the
read
website
list
on for the level one.
For the level 1 teacher training. That is
level
my vision for this book, is that it becomes a mandatory reading for the base training of Kundalini Yoga worldwide, and for all yoga teacher trainings, actually. Yeah, and just how you took all the stories from a span of decades and different people's experiences, and a person's experience is just their lens of experience, right? And that's what's so good about listening to stories, is their lens of experience is theirs, and your lens of experience is yours, and somebody else's lens of experience is their own. But when you put those together, different parts of the brain can light up that allows you to connect pieces that, until those pieces are connected, you can't see how that was a purposeful disconnect.
Yeah.
How you've purposely been disconnected from parts of your own self, and that's what's part of built into this ethos of a community and teachings that we can't actually see until we have space from it. And I just think, as all ranges of the people that listen to this podcast, I just think that this is a flagship book that's going to support so many of us to know how to pass this story along without just the feeling of dread. Like, should I send him Philip de Slip's article? Should I send him The View? Or should I send him the last documentary that was put up? That was a little sensationalized. Should I send him this? Should I send him this? You don't even know where to begin. Should I send him a podcast interview? But whose story? And it's just so much. So very easily our brain goes into shutdown, because that's a protective mechanism. When it's too much, we go into shutdown. And so what this material, I think, and the hard work of the last couple of years you've done, Els, really is going to support a lot of people to make their own choice about how to move forward, because you can't actually make that choice. We talk about that throughout the book, and even in our collaboration about doing this, people need to decide for themselves. That's essentially the base fundamental of trauma healing, is you got to do it in the way that works for you.
On your
rhythm. That's not an objective truth, or it's not a subjective truth. Truth is truth, meaning harm is harm, abuse is abuse. So you don't get to move on with your subjective truth if you haven't actually read and looked and listened to the harm. So that's what this book offers. It lets people actually start taking bites out of the very much in plain sight truth that has always been there. We just were trained not to see it. I know you have some slides that really go to supporting visually what you were just talking about. All right, so this is the book that Els has put together for us in collaboration with the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast and Voices of Survivors. I want you all to know that those survivors that were included in the book were included in the conversation. They were not just added to the book. They were asked to be a part of it, and then contributed what needed to make adjustments so that their voice felt seen and heard and felt appropriately. And anybody who asked not to be included just because they were on the podcast didn't mean that they got included. We wanted to make sure that this was full levels of consent by all parties that were included. And we all know that there's lots of stories that are not yet included and not yet told, which is why we keep holding space for everyone. So Under the Yoga Mat, the dark history of Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini Yoga. And this is ready. So the link is in the show notes. You can get the ebook or you can get the actual version. This documentation has been coming out since 1969. It's been here all along. And we can't see those connected threads if we're not actually reading the material, paying attention, listening. And we know that's a hard feat when there's so much content. And so this is a really valiant effort to not just really acknowledge all of the truth tellers of the last number of decades, but also to put it all into one sourced file that allows you to take it in and come up to your own conclusions and really start turning this part of your own critical brain on. I think your work, your efforts here are so important to Els. I really appreciate the diligence.
Yeah, but without your support and your input, it will not be there. So I think it's an effort, and all the stories from the survivors and their very brave agreement to have their stories out in the open, most of them even with their names named. It's very brave, and it's and what I try to do is to write it in a very digestible form. So the language I used is, I try to use easy language, not too much jargon of the yoga, or I try to explain every strange sounding word for non-Sikhs. So normally it should read easily, but the content is heavy, of course.
Yeah, meaning it's made for somebody who's not in the Sikh Dharma Kundalini Yoga lingo. So somebody who's in the outside world, and you're wanting them to get a sneak peek into the horrible, crazy, chaotic Under the Yoga Mat world. This book will do that. And that's why I also think it'll be a tremendous tool in teacher trainings worldwide, whether Kundalini Yoga based or not, hopefully on whole levels of certification, that there ends up that this type of book is a required reading. And I'm really hoping that that's what this work impacts. I want listeners to hear that this is not a for-profit endeavor. Els is not making money on this. This was never the intention here. This is a non-for-profit. She's invested her own dollars to do this. She's doing it as well to translate it. Do you want to tell us about the languages you're translating it into?
Well, we are waiting what the book does in English, and then see. Then Spanish, of course, is one of the main first languages we would like.
But over time, the real mission is to make sure that we're getting it into the countries
in different. Yeah, and because I do not know how yet, but I really hope that it is also read in Europe. There are enough people in Europe who know English. And also there is the cult research. I think it's an interesting source also for people who do cult research.
I agree. Anybody cult researching this is going to be tremendous. But I think it's really going to serve so many of us that are knotted inside, don't even know where to begin. I know when I try to tell the story to somebody, it's like a fire hose of information. And I really rack my brain as to what should I send them first? Should I send them the latest article by Phyllis DeSlip? Should I send them this one, that one? And something that really honors voices, current day, the past, both academic as well as personal, just all the ranges is just, I think it's such an important element that we haven't yet seen. And I really feel like it will help a lot of people.
That's what
so spread the word, folks. The link is in the show notes. It is live. If you are hearing this podcast, you could purchase the book today. So get the ebook, spread the word, and help us spread this to where it needs to go. Tell us about why you chose this song.
Well, the moment you asked, the moment we agreed to have an uncomfortable conversation, it was some weeks ago, and that was the time of the Eurovision Song Festival, unknown to you, of course. But I had just the day before seen the the contribution that Belgium was going to send. And I was like blown away by it. So it's a gay guy who represented us, and he was so authentic. And so he brings the song of saying, I will continue always. How hard it is, whatever they do to me, however they try to repress me or work against me, I will continue for you. I do it just for you. And I think when I heard this, I felt such a joy inside, because I think over all these years that I've been working on the website and on the book, sometimes I think, what am I doing? Lonely, a Belgian old woman, far away from the center of all these, where it all happened. What are you doing? But then when I listen to your conversations and to the survivors who have the courage to bring their stories, then I think, yeah, I do it for you. And I think this is where you can continue doing difficult things if you know you do it for somebody, not for your own, not to protect your own position or to become rich or to whatever. That's a different type of satisfaction. But if you can do something that is difficult and that you feel a lot of resistance, but you know who you are doing it for, that gives you joy. That's
so
why.
well said. Thank you. So well said.
And yeah, so the very nice thing during the performance, so there is a video, is that there is this queer guy coming at to dance. I don't forget the name of the dance, but it's beautiful. I love it. It's very joyful.
Thank you. I'm struck, before we move forward to listen to the song, I'm struck in remembrance of the early students that were sent to open up Europe. And I know some of these folks and some of the early generations of kids that were married and sent to Amsterdam or sent to Germany, who built up these legacies in these ashrams early, so that many decades later, people like you would join. And the stories are reminding me that their silence is a part of what keeps this disconnect from ever coming full circle. Is historically, that's always been used. Oh, Europe is so far from the epicenter of what's going on. And that's been the narrative of people who set up shop in Europe in the early ashram days of whether it was Holland or Germany or Italy or whatever. And the abuse stories they endured, and then moved on, and then new teachers that came up, and then moved on, and then new teachers that came up. And this is how cults go on for generations, and this is how systemic abuse happens. So just to hear what you're sharing in terms of the song, it just kind of reminded me, like, this is for you. This is for you, survivors. We do this for you, because even when you don't have the voice or have the courage or have the words, we are here for you. And there'll come a time when your voice is able to speak out for another generation.
And you have the right to be heard.
Yes. Yes, you do. Yes, we all do. Let's listen to our song.
Gustav.
We got Gustav, Because of You.
Going crazy, I'll carry on, and it's all because of you. Because of you. Remember when they told us you're not good enough, and then you came into my life, and you changed my world for good. Told me to love myself a bit harder than yesterday.
Hey.
Well, life is too short, and we sure got to celebrate.
Yes, we do. All right, folks, we don't listen to the whole song because of copyright, but be sure to check out the show notes playlist for the Uncomfortable Conversations 3HO playlist on Spotify. That was fantastic. I can tell that's a great song to metabolize this conversation. Let's get our bodies moving. And what's any last words you have for listeners?
Listen.
That's always what I say, folks. Hashtag listen.
Mhm. Yeah,
Listening
and
changes us.
I hope we have not been confusing. This is a confusing story and it is complex. So I hope people can get something out of it.
I think
also
it'll
from
be
the book.
fantastic. Yeah, I think it'll be fantastic. People listen at whatever level they're ready for, and that's
Mhm.
just okay.
Mhm.
But I am absolutely excited that launch day has come for this
Yes.
material.
Yes.
It has
Me
been
too.
over a year's worth of collaboration back and forth to ensure that we've done this well and in a place that was um, in collaborating with survivor voices and making sure that what is shared feels good. Because sometimes our story is so important and it's just not the right time for you to share. And that is just okay. And we honor wherever you're at. And so really this work is about supporting all of us to be able to disseminate this information. Because if we move on and pretend that it's done, another generation and many generations continue to be brought into the fold. And so this book is an attempt to help people really get the information that has always been there, but is so easily buried within the marketing machine of the yoga of awareness in the age of the Aquarian transition. Because we are at the time of our transition, and now is where all those teachings are fully amplified. So nothing like speaking the truth in the midst of darkness. And that's what Under the Yoga Mat is all about. The dark history of Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini Yoga. Get the book. Link is in the show notes, and spread the word. Support it on your platforms, promote it on your podcasts. Let us know any other suggestions on how we can get the word out to teacher trainings and Yoga Alliance certifications and all the levels, because this is important beyond Kundalini Yoga. It's important on all levels of spiritual communities that use coercive control to get you to keep buying stuff. And thank you, Els.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for spending your time. Thank you for our partnership. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to the day that we meet in life.
Yes,
in
I
Africa,
can't
we
wait
said. In
to.
Kenya,
Yes,
we said. Yes.
in Kenya or wherever we end up. All right, folks, www.undertheyogamat.com. Check it out. Also, the abuseInKundaliniYoga.com is the other website. And this concludes another episode of the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast, the untold stories of the 3HO Kundalini Yoga community. If you'd like to contribute to this podcast, you can make a one-time or monthly donation at gurunishan.com. And be sure to email me if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, gn@gurunishan.com. I think that's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.